glad you could join me again today. I was in a car with a young mother a while back, and her child was giving her problems. And he would scream and cry if he didn't get the tablet. When that kind of died, then he was upset that he wanted the phone, he wanted to watch movies or play games, and he just was giving her a really hard time. And her comment to me was that that's just the way kids are now, there's just not much we can do as a parent. Well, I kind of had to hold my tongue because there were other people in the car, but I'm a bit old school when it comes to things like this. I firmly believe that the parent should be the parent in the situation and that no child should be allowed to just scream and cry in order to get their way. If my kids did that, then they would certainly lose their privilege. And that's what these devices are. They're privileges. They're not the right of a child. They're not something the child has to have to survive. They're a privilege. And privileges can be removed. And parenting is hard. It's always been hard. And no good parent really wants their child to be unhappy. We'd love to be able to please them all the time, but that isn't how life is, isn't it? It's not reality. And it's not true for them. It's not true for us, is it? Nothing can make us happy all the time. So I thought today we might look at picking some fights with our kids that are worth fighting over. Things that will be a benefit to our children and things we need to talk with them about, not so much about fighting over a device or a movie or a tablet. The first fight that we need to have with our children is reading. Reading is so paramount to life. You can't get really anywhere easily in life unless you can read. It's so basic, and it teaches reasoning and concentration and comprehension. These are things that we need to learn, and skills that children need to develop in their lives. They don't have to read a book every week, but they need to be reading something every day. As one of the teachers of my children told me, let them read comic books, even just anything where they're reading and they're retaining and they're using what they're reading. And daily devotions are a good way. You can get small children's books with short little devotions that you can listen to them read to you, or you can read with them. And the teacher even told me read together at the same time, so they learn how the intonation of words and how sentence structure flows as you read together. And we used to really enjoy that, reading together. Reading to them at bedtime is a good way, and letting them enjoy the story. It's a skill that just really must be learned and practiced before it can be beneficial and enjoyable. It's hard to learn to read. Some people really struggle with it, but it's still a fight we need to have with our kids. They must read, so teach them to read and make sure you're reading as well. Another fight that a parent must win is the outside fight. Children are not supposed to be sedentary. That's for old folks. Kids are supposed to be moving, and they need fresh air and physical challenges. That's how their muscle and their frame grows, and they build strength. But sitting for hours behind a computer or staring at a tablet is going to leave them physically weak. And teaching them to get outside, to explore, to learn about nature, to learn about weather and animals and plant life and all these different things are really good for them. It excites their imagination, and it makes a great way for you to have time to talk with them about God and creation and help them to enjoy the beauty of the earth that they live in, and to teach them to take care of the earth because they'll be taught to value it. But if they're inside all the time, it's not going to be any benefit. Another fight that is a really difficult battle is the fight of work. Around our house, there used to be a joke that I would say, and I really did mean it, I still mean it today. If we'd all work together, we could get this job done in 30 minutes. But it would be like herding cats because they'd be everywhere the minute I wanted them to do some kind of a job. But most kids, and adults too, will avoid work if at all possible. But work is another of those life skills that we need. It's God ordained from the time of the garden. Work was a part of it. God knows there's a benefit and a satisfaction in a job well done. As a matter of fact, we need them to learn this skill of work because we need them to help us around the house sometimes. And more than that, we want them to grow up to be productive adults, able to hold a job and care for their families in the future. So work is going to be a part of that. But when we do everything for them, we're not teaching them good life skills. We're teaching them laziness and selfishness. One person said, let sweat be their teacher. That's kind of cute. But there are priceless lessons that can only be learned by getting in and getting a job done and learning to enjoy that and learning to value productivity. So that picking a fight over work is a very important fight to pick. Another fight I often see is the meal fight. Kids would rather snack than they would sit down with the family and eat. But we need to teach our children that the person that took time to prepare the meal, that God gave us the meal, that we need to sit down together and have family time over that meal is an important quality in our home. They are necessary, really, for the pace of the craziness of life because they give our family time to talk and to enjoy each other and to laugh and to build camaraderie and even talk about things. Meal times place importance on the family and they create happy memories. And my parents used them as a time to, sometimes we'd talk about the news, what was going on. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis when I was a child, and Dad basically explained those things to us. If there was other things going on, it would give him a chance to sit and talk and explain and teach. It also was a time when my parents would teach us how to use manners. They might try different kinds of food and teach us different tastes, and things like that could be done inside the home and not embarrass them when we got out into public. And praying became a customary habit, and it's something that we need to teach our children to be appreciative that our food is a gift from God. So make a meal time and stick with it. Be consistent. Make it an expected activity. My kids knew dinner time was between 5 and 5:30, and you'd better be home for it. It was a very important time, and we all looked forward to it. Now, one more. What about that boredom fight? Well, I'm bored was a phrase that was banned from our house. If you were bored, that meant you didn't have anything to do. So if my children used that phrase, I found them a job. And it wasn't long before they learned to keep themselves occupied. I also heard a TED talk about the benefits of boredom, and there was one thing that stood out to me. He pointed out that being bored gives the mind time to think, because we need void spaces for creativity. And if we're being constantly entertained, then we don't have time to create or think on our own. We just have information overload, but no real conscious thought. And did you know it's okay for kids to be bored? It really is. You don't have to entertain them all the time. And pushing their face into a tablet doesn't solve that problem either. You need to teach them how to create activity. Go and read, go and color, go clean your room. All kinds of things that they can do when they say they're bored, that you can put something beneficial in there. But if you keep giving them stuff to do yourself, then you're just creating an activity addict. They need to understand that there's a time to be quiet. They need to learn how to just be themselves and be with themselves, how to love stillness, how to be polite in uncomfortable situations. And so letting them be bored is not a bad thing. Don't be intimidated by the assault of complaints. Just let them understand that there's times when everybody gets bored, but what are you going to do at that time? Make it productive. Another step of growth for children is learning that there are other people in the world, that others matter, and that they are to be involved politely with them. And this is something that we try to teach our children when they're little. That's why we take them into little play groups and things like that to teach them to share what you have. All these kinds of things. These are fights that we need to pick with our children as well, to teach them that others are there and that they need to allow others to go first, to think about what other people feel, and to fight off that me first thing that's so prevalent in our society today. You know, giving holds its own reward, but the child who never learns to give or think about anyone else other than himself is going to face a hard time in life. They won't like it, but that's not the point. They need to learn to put others first, or as the Bible says, to esteem others better than themselves. And that's a trait that many adults do not implement or fully understand. The talking fight is another fight that parents face. Getting your child to talk with you about things they're struggling with or don't understand can be really hard. Talking to them about the birds and the bees and dating and body image and values and all sorts of things that they need to hear often causes them just to roll their eyes and clam up. But they need and want your perspective. So tell them about the lessons that you've learned and give them godly counsel and wisdom. And you might not think they're listening, but just talk with them anyway. Get those conversations going so that there's an openness about these types of things. And one final fight that's worth having is the fight about limitations. All of us live with limitations. There are rules in life, written, unwritten. There's laws of the land and an authority structure even in adulthood. And fighting against these rules, as you know, or thinking you can live above them, only causes heartache. So teach your child the benefit of authority structure and obedience. Screen time, diets, schedules, homework, cleaning their room, and all manner of things can be related to limitations. They need to work as a team, be a part of the family, and they've got to follow the rules, teaching them to have those limits in life, to not be an addict in that sense, to have control, to value their time, to measure their time. Teach them the limits, the authority, and the guidance of life, and teach them to obey. And that takes me back to that screaming child, because he wanted his tablet. If we don't parent, we are teaching our children to scream to get what they want. And we breed anarchy, and all of society will be affected. So be the parent in the situation, and then pick your fights wisely. Make sure they're a worthy fight, something that's going to be a benefit to that child and to your home. And you know what? Your child will thank you later. And so will everyone else. I'll catch you next week.